This is the one.
Guys, we're having technical issues. The Wendigos do not want us to talk about them.
Uh-huh. They have
Which, now that I
secrets.
said that, actually creeps me out a little. Or my mom's house is haunted.
Yep.
I'm at my mom's,
Yeah.
everyone.
Either
You're in
one.
California. Um,
Ooh.
okay, we're going to get back into it. Okay,
Yeah.
so the Wendigo. So this is a quote just to start it off to give you a nice visual of the Wendigo from
Mhm.
a teacher and scholar based in Ontario, Canada. His name is Basil Johnston. He's an
Oh,
Ojibwe
Basil.
teacher. Basil. Or Basil. I just assume it's Basil.
Yeah,
Does anyone
I would
actually go by
assume.
Basil? I don't know.
I don't know.
Who knows? What do I know? Okay. Quote, the Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tautly over its bones. With its bones
Ew.
pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton, recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody. Its body was unclean and suffering from suppurations of the flesh, giving off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition,
Ew.
of death and corruption. Ah,
Ugh. Yuck. What
I
a
feel like
description.
I know we should cue oh my god, Thriller by Michael Jackson.
Oh, yeah, it did sound
Calls
like
across the
that.
land. So yeah, that's the Wendigo, casual.
Oh, wow.
So, in Minnesota's North Woods, the forests of the Great Lake region and the central regions of Canada, these are the places said to live a malevolent being called a Wendigo. Um, there are a lot of different descriptions around what it looks like. Generally, that description is like pretty common, but there are
Mhm.
some differences in terms of like, is it humanoid? Does it look like just a creature? Like, does it look like a person but with like horns
Mhm.
and looks kind of like they're decomposing? Gross.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so a lot of the story or the background, like the origin of the legend, originates from the Great Plains, the Great Lakes, First Nations. A lot of it's like deeply embedded in Indigenous lore, but
Mhm.
all throughout kind of Eastern U.S. and Canada. So the creature may appear as a monster with some human characteristics or as a spirit who has possessed a human being and made them monstrous. So it's either like they
Hmm.
exist like that or they've basically taken someone's body.
Wow.
Historically, and in all of the legend, because it come up among, I'm gonna really mess up these names and I'm so sorry. Algonquin, Ojibwe, Eastern Cree, Saulteaux, West Main Swampy Cree, Naskapi, and Innu peoples. So there, it's like it's shown up in a
Everywhere.
lot of places. And
Mhm.
what I don't fully know about, and I think this has come up in the past, where like a lot of the legends and lore from indigenous cultures, like it's common across a lot of indigenous cultures. What I don't know though
Mhm.
is like how communicative were they amongst themselves? Like I don't know
Yeah.
how much different like tribes or groups of peoples were chatting about these things.
Yeah. That's a good
So
question.
part of me is like, that kind of validates it if they're not talking a lot. So I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
Creepy.
I mean,
Um,
that's like how there are such similar creatures or beings
right.
across the world.
Yeah.
And at the
Long before
time,
globalization.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
So
Yeah. A little
interesting.
sus. Um,
Hmm.
take that, non believers.
Yeah. What do you
I'm
have to
sure
say
non
about
believers
that?
have some like really legit explanations, but it's fine.
Yep.
Um, so, in all of the legends, there's an association with cannibalism, murder, insatiable
Hey.
greed, and and cultural taboos against such behaviors. So, in a lot of the stories, it's like obviously those things have never been accepted in any of these cultures. That's all I was trying to say.
Hmm.
In all of the different names, so Wendigo, Windigo, Wittigo, Wittico, and Weetigo, they all roughly translate to the same thing, which is, quote, the evil spirit that devours mankind.
Ugh. That's
Yikes.
awful.
So again, sort of different visual depictions. Some are described as like human size, some are described as giants, so way bigger than human beings. But common to all of the descriptions is the view that they're malevolent, cannibalistic, supernatural. They're also very strongly associated with winter, the north, coldness, famine, and starvation. So there's definitely like a Great North, it's freezing here kind of energy.
Yeah.
And there are some different like quotes from like written legends from some of these different groups. So the Algonquin legend describes the creature as, quote, a giant with a heart of ice. Sometimes it is thought to be entirely made of ice. Its body is skeletal and deformed, with missing lips and toes. End quote. Ugh.
Ew.
Missing lips, just for like toes, whatever. Missing
Yeah.
lips,
Ew, and
no.
then just teeth so prominent.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. I think about like gum in it.
Um,
Oh,
I don't know which is worse.
I don't either. Actually, they're both bad.
Yeah.
Um, the Ojibwe describe it, quote, it was a large creature as tall as a tree with a lipless mouth. Apparently, this is a common description,
Uh-huh.
and jagged teeth.
Ew.
Its
Mm-mm.
breath, it gets worse. Its breath was a strange hiss, its footprints full of blood, and it ate
I,
any man, woman, or child who ventured into its territory. And those were the lucky ones. Sometimes
mm.
the Wendigo chose to possess a person instead, and then the luckless individual became a Wendigo himself, hunting down those he had once loved and feasting upon their flesh. End quote.
Oh no.
Yeah, really sad.
That's just pure evil.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
the origin story, according to the legend, is a Wendigo is created whenever a human resorts to cannibalism to survive. So in the past, this obviously would occur when Indians and settlers found themselves stuck in, freezing cold snow and ice in these like northern forests, stranded
Hmm.
for days. You see it with the Donner Party, like it happens. People will try to eat each other. Big yikes.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, in order to survive. Other versions of the legend cite that humans who displayed extreme greed, gluttony, and excess might also be possessed by a Wendigo. So, like the spirit already exists, it's just bringing it
Hmm.
into someone's body. So, obviously, the myth is kind of like a cautionary tale, too, of like cooperate and
Yeah.
moderate, so
Hmm.
interesting.
Hmm.
Um, the creature is said to have several skills and powers, including stealth. It's a near perfect hunter. It knows and uses every inch of its territory and can control the weather through dark magic.
Whoa.
Um, yeah, they're also portrayed as simultaneously gluttonous and emaciated from starvation. So it's like a hunger they can never quench,
Oh,
um, which
it's
is,
miserable.
yeah, terrible. They're
Hangry
said,
all the time.
yeah, it's
They're just hangry, that's
they're
all.
just angry. That's it. Honestly, I'm probably kind of a Wendigo when I skip a meal. They're said to be cursed to wander the land, eternally seeking to fulfill their voracious appetite for human flesh. And if there's nothing left to eat, they starve to death.
Hmm.
So big yikes.
Yeah.
The legend lends its name to a very disputed modern medical term called Wendigo psychosis. So some
Hmm.
psychiatrists consider it a syndrome that creates an intense craving for human flesh and a fear of becoming a cannibal. So this
What?
occurs within people living around the Great Lakes of Canada and the US, which is kind of interesting.
Huh.
Usually develops in the winter in individuals who are isolated by heavy snow for long periods. Initial symptoms are poor appetite, nausea, and vomiting. Subsequently, the individual develops a delusion of being transformed into a Wendigo monster. People who have Wendigo psychosis increasingly see others around them as being edible.
Ay.
But at the same time, they have an exaggerated fear of becoming cannibals. So it's almost
Hmm.
like intrusive thoughts. Like they are like obsessed with this idea, but are horrified that they're obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Um, the most common response when a person showed signs of Wendigo psychosis was a curing attempt by traditional native healers. In past cases, if these attempts failed and the possessed person began to threaten those around them or act violently or antisocially, they were executed. So there have been reports regarding this psychosis dating back hundreds of years, which is really kind of interesting that it still happens.
Yeah.
Um, there were a few documented cases that honestly I won't get into in too much detail because they're really just like super sad.
Yeah.
Um, but I'll say one, which is a really well known one. It's a man named Jack Fiddler. He was an Oji-Cree chief and medicine man who was known specifically for his powers at defeating Wendigos. He claimed to have defeated 14 during his lifetime. Some of these creatures were said to have been sent by enemy shamans, and others were members of his band who had been taken with the insatiable, incurable desire to eat human flesh. And this was likely in like the late 1800s or early 1920s. Early 1900s through the 1920s. There's not like a specific time frame. In the latter case, so the people within his group, family members usually asked Fiddler to kill a very sick loved one before they turned Wendigo. His brother was actually killed. His name was Peter Flett, after turning Wendigo when the food ran out on a trading expedition. Hudson's Bay Company traders, the Cree, and missionaries all knew the Wendigo legend, although they often explained it as mental illness or superstition. But regardless, several incidents of people turning Wendigo and eating humans are documented in the company's records. So the Hudson Bay Company has records.
Wow.
So I don't know when exactly he lived, but in 1907, Fiddler and his brother Joseph were arrested by Canadian authorities for murder. Jack committed suicide, but Joseph was tried and sentenced to life in prison. He ultimately was granted a pardon, but died 3 days later in jail before receiving the news of his pardon. So like very weird things.
Yeah. Very.
So Wendigo creature sightings. So this goes back hundreds of years. Wendigo creature sightings are still reported, particularly in northern Ontario, specifically near the Cave of the Wendigo. Like, why would you go anywhere near that? And around Kenora, where traders have allegedly spotted it, trackers and trappers for decades. So, like, people have been reporting this for forever. Many still believe that the Wendigo roams the woods and prairies of northern Minnesota and Canada. Many have given Kenora, Ontario, Canada, the title of Wendigo capital of the world. And sightings of this creature in this area have continued well into the new millennium.
Wow.
So avoid the Cave of the Wendigo. So
common sense, I think.
Common sense. So this one is from L1K Taint. I don't know if that's
what an unfortunate name.
Very, very unfortunate. Anyway, on Reddit, so they note up front, like this whole
just a little like potty humor over here.
Same.
Yeah.
They note up front the whole story takes place on an 8-mile stretch of road in Hamlin, New York. So I'm assuming that's upstate. So the OP says, I was 16 years old and went on a fishing trip with my 4 friends, Brian, Mike, Ethan, and Joe. The fishing spot was under a bridge about 1.5 miles from any houses. So they're kind of not in the middle of nowhere, but a little ways away. The day started out fun. Everybody was excited to go fishing and smoke. And where we were walking to the spot, there were squash fields littering the sides of the main road. So we snagged a few and continued on, also grabbing some corn. We get to the spot and we fish for a few hours until it was around 9:30 p.m. And this is a quote. This is where shit pops off. This is why I love Reddit, because they're talking about something like heavy, and then they're like, shit hit the fan, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
So he says before, or they, I'm not sure gender, but before I say anything else, I want to recognize that my friend Brian is a descendant of the Navajo tribe and believes in druid stuff. And then in parentheses, I'm an atheist. We start to hear dogs barking in the distance, and it sounds like a pack of wild dogs, but the chances of that being a thing are pretty low, so we consider coyotes. We soon realize that coyotes don't bark, they yip, so that's out of the question. We're all feeling a little paranoid at this point, so we come to the conclusion that walking back the 8 miles and downing a bottle of rum at Brian's house would be a very good idea. So they're a mile and a half from civilization or other homes. They're 8 miles from home. A quarter of the way back, Brian stops dead in his tracks in the middle of the road. The expression on his face changes from concern quickly to the look of fear. I walk up to him wondering what's up, and he grabs me by the wrist and points my hand out into the field. All I could see looking back at me was a pair of eyes the size of footballs.
Oh, wow.
That is
Huge.
huge and horrifying.
Yeah.
Me and Brian agree silently to keep it between us as to not freak everybody out and end up getting split up. So we just kind of pick up the pace so everybody is forced to follow at our speed. So halfway back to Brian's house, we pass a white farmhouse with a cornfield across from it. Next thing I know, it feels like a plane buzzed by and there's about a 40-yard trail crashing through the corn.
Whoa.
Oh, and while all this is happening, we can still hear the fucking dogs following us.
Whoa. Oh,
Yeah.
God.
We make it safely back to Brian's house and pull out a fucking 12 gauge and a bottle of rum and sit on his porch. And we hear the same dogs from earlier start whining off in the distance like they were upset at us or something. I then proceeded to have night terrors while drunk at my buddy's house.
A fun end to the night.
Yeah. So then I went into the comments and there are a bunch of people who are native, it sounds like, or indigenous in background. And a lot of them kind of agree that there is like Wendigos will sometimes use corn or other crops like that to lure people in, like using them as bait. And so I don't know, there's just some like kind of interesting, like weird theories about that. And people were like, yeah, I mean, they're kind of guarding that space because they know people will come in there and steal some stuff.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Or trying to harvest the crop. So that's creepy.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the other one is from May 1400. And they called it Something in the Woods. So they say this story is 100% true, and I'm writing it on here to warn other people and let them know there is definitely something out there. And to this day, I still don't know what it was, nor have I gone into any woods or forest since. If you don't believe me, that's fine. Read it as a fun story. But for those of you out there with an open mind or who've seen something yourself, just know you're not alone. Just typing out and remembering this account is causing me to shake with fear.
Oh, poor thing. Traumatized.
So, yeah. First off, I am a girl and live in North Carolina in the United States. I was 15 at the time of my encounter and was definitely not a believer in anything supernatural, paranormal, or anything of the sort. It happened while I was at a local summer camp there, which like already kind of scares me.
Yeah.
There was absolutely nothing special about that day. No weird lights, people, animals, sounds, nothing. It was just the same camp schedule as I'd grown used to in the 2 weeks I'd already been there. My age group had just finished lunch and was able to persuade our counselor to let us play a game called Scatter down by the lake. It's like a giant hide and seek in the woods. Now, we'd play this at least 20 times before that day, and nothing weird had happened to any of us. We all grew up playing in the woods, so it's not like we had an aversion or fear of it. But for some reason, that day when our counselor shouted scatter and I ran to find a hiding place, it felt totally different. I had run as far as I could while still being able to see the lake. Those were the rules. And had found a huge old uprooted tree that I decided would be the perfect hiding place. So I laid down as close as I could against the ground and waited. I'd been there for about 5 minutes when I suddenly heard a voice calling my name in a weird, dreamy-like voice, and not just any voice. It was my mom's voice. Now, my mom and I are extremely close, thick as thieves, so I'd know her voice anywhere, and I would swear on my grave it was without a doubt her voice. But I knew it couldn't be her. She was 20 miles away at work, and even if it had actually been her and she'd come to pick me up early, the voice wasn't coming from the lake. It was coming from further out in the woods beyond the border of the camp. I knew I should have run away from this strange mimic mom voice, but I couldn't as it was almost hypnotic. It kind of messed with my thoughts and gave me doubts like, well, it could be my mom, or what if she's hurt and I have to go get her? All these things were flooding into my mind like someone had broken a dam I didn't know was there until they finally overwhelmed me and my emotions got the better of me. So I took off running in the direction the voice was coming from.
Hmm.
I ran as far as I could with only the strange voice as my guide. I couldn't have run more than 5 or 7 minutes when I got to a clearing and the voice suddenly stopped. When I entered the clearing and didn't hear my mom's voice calling me anymore, I could finally think clearly again and started to have little alarm bells go off inside my head saying, "You idiot, that is not your mom, run." But I couldn't run because I didn't know where to run. I'd gotten so far away, I had completely lost sight of the lake by the camp, and I had absolutely no idea where I was, which is just scary in and of itself. Like getting lost in the
Yeah.
woods is scary.
Mhm.
Um, and I was completely exhausted from running. With no other options than to sit and catch my breath, I did just that. No sooner had I sat down, more warning bells went off in my head. I quickly did a 360 survey around the clearing and noticed a strange noise. It wasn't the continuation of the voice before, it was the distinct sound of chattering teeth, like if you were cold. Only there was no one else around, and it was the middle of June in North Carolina. So there's
Hmm.
no way someone would be cold.
Yeah.
And that's when I heard it, leaves and sticks crunching on the edge of the small clearing. And I realized I had the feeling that something was watching me. And then whatever it was moved and fast in circles around the clearing, almost like it was circling prey. And it was in that moment I knew whatever it was had led me out there away from the rest of my group. So, exactly like the predator, my instincts had been screaming at me that it was. Without any other option than to try and escape, I took off in the direction I thought I came running from and sprinted as fast as I could, all the while hearing the chattering of teeth and sticks crunching behind me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't dare turn around and see what was chasing me because I knew that if I did, I would slow down, and I refused to slow down. It felt like a lifetime running away from this thing before I finally saw the lake. And even though I didn't think I could run faster than I ever have in my life, I did. I broke the tree line and ran to the lake where I knew my friends were. At that point, I felt safe enough to stop and look back and see just what had been chasing me. But when I did, I only saw a fleeting form running back the way I had come and the distant sound of chattering teeth. When I finally found my counselor, who's the one who was like the seeker in this hide and seek game, I was
Mhm.
hysterical with fear and hugged her as tight as I could. When I finally calmed down, she tried to get me to tell her what had happened, but I just asked, "Were you calling my name? Were you calling my name?" Before she even said anything, I already knew the answer. After all, it had been my mom's voice that had led me away from everybody else. But what she
Hmm.
said was much more bone chilling to me. She told me, "No one called for you. We didn't even know you were gone. Everyone's still hiding, and the game isn't over yet."
Oh.
So that's
Weird.
me. And also, like,
Yeah.
who knows what other kids out there were potentially like being lured out into that clearing.
Yeah. Ooh,
So very
that's
creepy.
very spooky.
Yeah. So a bunch of people in the comments said like, doesn't that seem a little too far south? But
Mm.
apparently there are other, like the Carolinas, like there are other states like a little farther south that they do occupy. um,
Mhm.
they also allegedly, according to some people on Reddit, have been seen in Alaska, other places in the north that are cold,
Cold.
basically.
Mhm.
Um, and then other people in the thread, because some of that, like mimicking the voice, kind of gives like a Skinwalker vibe.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, though, said it's way too far east, that skinwalkers are not found on the East Coast. It's like
Mm.
almost exclusively the Western US
West.
and Canada.
Mhm.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. But who
Wow.
knows? Like, couldn't these creatures adapt and migrate? Like
Yeah.
they're probably evolving. If we evolved, I'm sure they do too.
Yeah. Mhm. I'm sure.
So creepy.
Yeah, very. Yeah, if these things have potentially football-sized eyes, they could walk from Canada to North Carolina
I
pretty quickly.
cannot. I cannot. So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's very spooky. I didn't
Where the
realize they were so evil.
I
Like
know,
those descriptions of them, they're
I know.
monsters.
So horrifying. Yeah, in Charmed and in Buffy, those episodes that scared the shit out of me as a kid, um, they were like kind of werewolfy looking, like furry
Hmm.
people, kind of.
Yeah.
Um, furries. They were furries. No, they weren't furries.
Uh-huh.
But they were kind of like wolf kind of vibe, like
Hmm.
humanoid wolf kind of vibe.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Interesting.
Creepy as shit. That last story
Hmm.
really
Yeah,
scared me.
very.
That
Yeah.
is horrifying.
Poor
Um,
thing.
yeah,
Well,
15. I
I
mean,
know.
the thing she escaped. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
kind of like, if they're such good hunters, like, how did she survive to tell that story? But who knows?
Right. Hmm. She had a shield somehow.
I guess. Who knows? Anyway,
Magic.
your turn.
Okay, my turn.
Yay.
Speaking of furry people, that's the perfect segue. I'm going to talk about Bigfoot. Um,
Yes! I'm so excited.
yeah, which just to start off, like I guess I never thought too much about Bigfoot before this,
Mhm.
so I don't think I was either a believer or a non-believer,
Yeah,
but now I'm kind of like, oh, this could
Bigfoot.
be interesting.
Because
So,
he's a cryptid, right? Bigfoot, the
mhm,
Yeti, they're cryptids.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Are they the same
So
thing?
Bigfoot and Yeti,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Basically, I
Okay.
saw somebody call them siblings. So it's
Wait,
like
cute.
Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, the
Oh, okay.
abominable snowman. They're all in the same category.
I'm just picturing
Yeah,
the Rudolph movie.
yeah, I know. But I didn't read too much about anyone but Bigfoot, even though they are very similar.
Okay,
But
perfect.
yeah, everyone knows already what Bigfoot is, but it's a large, usually very tall, furry, ape like being, but it has a human gait, so it walks on two legs. And um, they say that Bigfoot stories, like the legends of Bigfoot, come from an archetype known as the wild man.
Hmm.
And wild man lore spreads across cultures, but the standard story involves a large, hairy figure similar to a man, but more wild.
Hmm.
And in these legends, the wild man is usually harassing a town, stealing food, stealing livestock, and drinking from their water supply. So eventually, the townspeople get smart and they swap the water with rotten milk or some
Ah,
other fermented
yeah.
substance that will make the wild man sick and eventually fall asleep or be incapacitated, at which
Mhm.
point they're able to trap and kill him. So,
Wow.
folklorists believe that some of these wild man stories might have developed at a time where people were all about being civilized,
Mm,
and we were losing touch with nature.
mm,
So, this idea of a wild, uncivilized man was something to fear as a reflection of who we were before, which is kind of interesting.
that is
But
interesting.
that's obviously not like an all encompassing explanation because indigenous groups have Bigfoot legends that
Mm,
far predate any
yeah.
sort of so
Oh,
called
that's interesting.
civilized society.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. So they go back forever. But the perception of the Bigfoot that we have today is quite different from that wild man legend
Mm,
because he's typically nonviolent. And of course, he's really elusive because we still don't have any hard and fast evidence of his or maybe their existence, because there might be a lot of them. But um, the term Bigfoot is
Who are we to
actually,
gender them? Who are we to
I
gender
know, I know. Or,
non-binary? We don't know.
yeah, they could be he, she, they, and there could be thousands of them. We just don't
Yeah.
know.
Oh God, that's a
So,
terrifying thought.
yeah, except it's also kind of, I don't, not compelling. I don't know the word, but I was thinking about like how there are potentially still tribes in the Amazon that we
Mhm.
don't know about.
Yeah.
So who's to say these aren't just peaceful
Yeah.
creatures just living their life somewhere
Seriously,
that we haven't
I'm
seen?
so excited about like what you have to share because I think of them as kind of like a villain, but I don't actually know if that's true. Like, could they just
Yeah,
be like gentle giants, like just trying to live their
yeah,
little furry lives? I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I didn't see many like violent encounters at all. I think they're just sort of there and then they're gone kind of
Yeah.
types.
Leave me alone.
So, yeah, they're just trying to live life.
Yeah.
But yeah, the name Bigfoot, though, is actually pretty recent, and you can trace it back to these journalists named Andrew Genzoli and Betty Allen,
Hmm.
who wrote a column for the Humboldt Times in 1958, which Humboldt, California.
Mhm.
Um, and it was in response to a letter that their paper had received from a group of loggers who had discovered some mysteriously large footprints while they were out in the forest.
Mhm.
So Andrew and Betty wrote their column thinking that it would just be this like fun one off thing, but
Mhm.
people were fascinated by it. So they did these follow up stories with the loggers that initially wrote in and found out that they had coined the term Bigfoot
Oh
to
my God.
refer to whatever creature it was. So that term
Interesting.
came up in the late 50s.
Okay.
Yeah. But since then, Bigfoot has become kind of a gimmick. Like he's been in movies as a villain, books as a villain. But there are a lot of people who believe in his existence as just
Mhm.
something that's there. So um, in 1978, two psychologists made this survey and they surveyed what they called mainstream scientists. So
Mhm.
I'm thinking like chemists and biologists, um, about their belief in cryptids like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. And a good portion of the people they reached out to declined to answer, which I think is an answer in itself. Um, but the results of those who did respond are interesting. Um, Overall, the respondents were more willing to entertain the possibility of the Loch Ness Monster than Bigfoot.
Really?
But yeah, which I kind of get because
Yeah.
water creatures, ocean creatures, there's so
We know
much that
so
we'll
little.
never know. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, so
But also,
they,
forests, like, we haven't explored every inch of forest that
right.
exists.
Yeah, like the Amazon will never see everything.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, hopefully
But
not, unless we cut all the trees down.
God, yeah.
Deforestation
Depressing.
makes me want to just
I know.
set
I
a
know.
blaze to someone.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
No,
jump into
I
a window
agree.
over
It's yeah. It's so hard to face those things. I mean, an inconvenient truth is like the most appropriate name
yeah.
for
I
that
mean,
whole thing.
that was so well titled.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's so inconvenient.
Yes, it's very inconvenient,
Could
but
have
we
been
have to
understated.
face it. Yeah. Oh man. So, okay, they were more willing to believe in the Loch Ness monster, but Um, over half of the respondents viewed this theoretical discovery of something like Bigfoot as having a significant scientific impact, and they were therefore more hopeful that something like that did exist.
That
So,
is really interesting, and I never really thought of that before from like a
Hmm.
biodiversity perspective, that like there's some
Yep.
humanoid creature that like looks and behaves pretty differently from us.
Yep. Yeah.
Huh.
It is. Yeah. Because it would have an impact, I think,
Right.
because it's clearly either ape like, human like, and we're
Yeah.
so similar that
Yeah.
it's somewhere in
I mean,
there. But
I've never thought about comparing them to apes, but yeah, actually they're more like apes in some
mhm.
ways.
Yeah, big furry body.
And kind of human like still, but
Hmm.
wild,
Yeah.
wilder than
Yes.
people.
Yeah, exactly. So, and yeah, speaking of apes, so she wasn't in that poll that I just mentioned, but I found an interview with Jane Goodall.
Yes, I was
And
hoping you'd say her name.
yeah, her quote was, well, now you will be amazed when I tell you that I'm sure they exist. And that was when she was asked about whether she believed in Bigfoot. So she said, I'm sure they
Interesting.
exist. Yeah. And in another interview with her following that one, she mentioned a time when she was in a remote village in Ecuador and she asked people if they'd ever seen a monkey without a tail. And three of the hunters replied, oh, yes, we've seen monkeys without tails. They walk upright and they're about 6 feet tall.
Oh, that gave me chills.
Yeah, and she noted there they know nothing of Bigfoot there.
Oh,
That's, yeah. Yeah, and she goes
well,
on
how do
to
you explain
say,
that? Like, how do you explain that? And it's Jane
yeah,
Goodall. It's like she's
right.
fucking reputable, you know?
Yeah,
It's like I don't make
extremely.
that up.
Yeah, no. And yeah, it's like she's dedicated her life to the study of
Right.
these. So I don't know.
Oh
It's
my God.
interesting.
Yeah, she wouldn't, yeah, like she wouldn't like muddy her,
Exactly.
yeah, reliability and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, none of that. She wouldn't do that.
Yeah, right. I
Oh, that's
know.
exciting.
I know. Because, yeah, she said even more. So she said, every single country has its version. Yeti, Yowie in Australia, Wild Man in China. So I don't know if perhaps it's a
Oh,
myth that stems from maybe the last of the Neanderthals. But
wow.
then, is the last of the Neanderthals still living in these remote forests? I don't know, but I'm not going to say it doesn't exist, and I'm not going to say people who believe in it are stupid. So,
Queen.
she's a gem.
She
I love
is. Wow.
her.
She's still living, isn't
Hmm.
she?
Yeah, she's 88 years old. I saw that today on Wikipedia.
Damn, sis. You get
Mm,
it. Good for her.
yeah.
All that monkey rubbing shoulders with the monkeys.
Yep.
Longevity.
I mean, how could you not have just a great outlook, not outview on life?
I mean, how you?
Just spending time, outview, whatever, with those creatures. So
Yeah.
amazing. Okay, so then Jane's, one of those interviews I mentioned was on NPR, and that led me to another NPR interview with Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who is a professor of anatomy and anthropology at Idaho State University. And he's also now a Bigfoot researcher, um, though he wasn't always convinced. But
Okay.
the thing that made him a believer was that he visited southeastern Washington and he met somebody who showed him a fresh set of like inhumanly large footprints out in the forest. And he said that he went into it looking, quote, for the proverbial fursuit or wooden foot, but he left stumped as to how to explain what he had seen. Because
Whoa.
he just said, like, I don't know how to
Well, let's
describe
think
it,
about
like the,
like footprints on on sand, like how
yeah,
the movement
exactly.
of your foot
Hmm.
shows.
Yes. And how that would be really hard to replicate if you were
Yeah.
like walking on stilts with fake big feet or
Also,
like
the
stamping.
idea of that seems more ridiculous to me.
Yeah. Like
It's
who
like
would
a
dedicate,
circus performer
yeah.
out to someone. waiting, hoping someone
Right,
notices.
because it's not guaranteed that someone would find it.
What do you do? Well,
Yeah.
I'm a Bigfoot impersonator. Um, not sure if anyone knows of me yet,
Yep.
but
Maybe one
time will
day.
tell, or not.
Yep. Oh my God. Yep.
Oh,
So
shit, that's funny.
less likely that, more likely Bigfoot.
Yeah, agreed.
So, yeah. But since that experience, most of his research has centered around Bigfoot tracks. So he assesses, I guess, the weight, the where they're going, etc. But he also has found some other potential evidence, including hair samples that, according to him, have yet to have a genetic match. So they don't know where this hair has come from. And Dr. Meldrum was also part of an effort to analyze that iconic footage of Bigfoot walking on the beach or whatever it was.
That is the best. That is
Yeah,
the best. He looks like he's like in a hurry to get to work.
I
Um,
know. His
like,
long
huh?
arms. Yeah,
We'll
I
definitely
know.
put that on our Instagram.
Yes, we have to. Um, but that footage was shot in 1967, and Dr. Meldrum has reviewed the like cleaned up and stabilized versions of that film. And he says that you're able to see muscle movements and like details that just wouldn't have been possible to
Yeah,
manufacture using a costume, particularly with the technology that they had available in those days.
yeah.
But one very confounding factor is that the costume manufacturer for the 1970 remake of Planet of the Apes claims to have sold one of the costumes from that movie to Roger Patterson, who was the one who filmed that footage.
Hmm.
But
I
I
don't
don't know.
know though. Like I'm looking at it right now.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look like an ape costume.
No, I agree.
It's too the legs are too long
Mm-hmm. And
and
the
the body
arms,
yeah, and the body isn't right and the face isn't right.
yeah. One of the articles with this Dr. Meldrum, there's a comparison, sort of. They put side by side of the Planet of the Apes costumes with that footage, and they're totally different.
Really?
So, yeah,
Okay, interesting.
I'll
Why
send
would
that to
someone
you
do that?
too.
Like, why would someone do that? Why would they be like, "Oh, well, we sold him this thing." It's like, "Did you?
Yeah,
You
attention, I guess. People do
did you?"
crazy things for that. But yeah, that footage, it's never been disproven or proven to be
Yeah.
real. Um, and yeah, like I said, it does not look like the costumes to me, so who knows?
Are we biased? Maybe.
Maybe.
Couple of
Do I care?
hangry do I care? No, we're just a couple of hangry Bigfoot stands, and
hmm
we
exactly.
are
Um, okay, but I think the most interesting source I came across is the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization website.
oh,
It's amazing. Like
I love that.
I know their website, it lists like every Bigfoot sighting going back decades, organized by geographic region.
Oh my
Um,
god. I
yeah,
love these people. Can we quit our jobs and become one of these people? Can we join the team?
yes. I mean, I was looking, there is a Bigfoot like hunt, not to kill it, but like to try to
Yeah.
find it,
Then.
in Colorado on August 4th through 7th.
Right. I'm
And I
booking my
was like, do I sign up for this?
Here we go, Dave.
I don't know. But they have these meetups, it looked like, in most states in the US, where you
My
can
god.
go with like a Bigfoot scientist, for lack of a better word, and they show you spots and try to find them.
Do people make money doing this? Because if so, Sign me up.
Yeah. I don't
I'll
know.
manage social channels.
That'd be, yeah. I mean, they probably need that because this website looks like it's from
Oh,
1995 or
great.
something. But um yeah, they also, all of these reports at the bottom, it shows like somebody that they work with. So, an established Bigfoot scientist, I'll keep saying.
Wow.
They do a follow up interview with the person who reports the sighting. And like, so they're
Oh,
vetting these people to make sure
yeah.
that they're actually serious about the story they're telling. So, it's really very impressive, actually, what they
Interesting.
do. But yeah, I just wrote down that in our home states of California and Colorado, there are 458 reported sightings in California on this website, and the most recent was in January of this year.
2022?
Yeah,
Oh my
yep.
God.
And there are 130 in Colorado, and the most recent one was last summer in June of 2021. So they're still updating. It's
They're
cool.
out there. They're out
Yeah.
there.
But um these, so you could go on this website and look and like read all of these, and I read several of them, and most are fairly similar
Yeah.
because they're usually fleeting sightings. They find a footprint, they find like a little tuft of hair or something. No one has had prolonged contact with a Bigfoot. But there's one story that I saw that was a little more detailed that I'll just read really quickly. So, Bud Jenkins and his wife were living on the far reaches of the small town of Fort Bragg, California, when it happened. Jenkins' wife's brother, Robert, had stepped outside the house around 5:30 p.m. when he heard the Jenkins dogs barking. Looking to see what was causing the commotion, Robert turned and saw a creature standing chest and shoulders above a 6 foot high fence at the back of the property. Yeah, so
Oh, he's
huge.
a big boy.
Yeah. Robert hurried inside to tell his family, and the three of them set out searching. They found a 16-inch footprint and an 11-inch handprint on the side of the house.
What?
So,
That is huge.
yeah, so footprint longer than a ruler. It's, yeah,
I'm
very,
measuring that out with my fingers, probably very inaccurately,
yeah,
but that's
but still, it's
still is
big.
big.
Yeah.
Is this how
Um,
men feel?
yeah, I was just gonna say that.
We got body
Oh,
humor. I love it.
classic. But yeah, that, I don't know if it's that exact footprint or if there was another. I mean, people have casts of all these Bigfoot footprints. I don't know if this one in particular was
Yeah.
cast in plaster, but there was one person who has like a whole museum of them, basically.
God.
So people are dedicated to trying to figure this out. Um, and I
I
don't
just
think
don't want
it's,
to trying to like hunt him, you know?
yeah, no, I
Doesn't
hope
seem
not.
like
No, I think people just want to know. It's just a mystery that people are really into.
like is he out
Um, yeah, exactly. But I don't know. What do you think?
I'm here for it. I'm very
Yeah.
here. What
Hmm.
about all the stuff with like, because aren't there theories too about Bigfoot being like some creature from another dimension or something like that?
Yeah. I remember you
Trust.
saying that.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
traveling. Like, I think the theory is something like it's a creature from another dimension and like out in the woods where people don't frequent that much. Like, that's a common place for there to be like not glitches in the matrix, but like wormholes, I guess
Hmm.
that would be called, like wormholes into another
Yeah.
dimension, just briefly.
Yeah.
And so the reason why so many interactions with him are or them are so fleeting is because you're getting a glimpse like through a wormhole, basically. Like you're not
Right.
actually seeing him in your world, you're seeing into another world,
Whoa.
which is wild.
Yeah, that
Or
is.
he pops into your world for a moment and goes back,
Yeah. Right.
like
And
on
that's
accident.
why. Yeah, that's why you can't like ever capture
Right.
anything.
Right.
Yeah, true. Because I think one of the biggest things that people question is why haven't we found any remains of anything?
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
or like Bigfoot roadkill or something, one of the people asked. But
Well, he's
I don't
huge
know.
for one. He'd wreck your car. He's like a
Yeah,
moose.
right. Yeah, that's true. And it's not like we find every animal bone
Right.
of
And
every
also,
animal that dies in
yeah,
the
it seems like they're
forest.
living in like deep woods or forests. But I mean, is there such thing? This is probably a really stupid question, but is there such thing as like moose roadkill? Like, I just don't think they wander out into the road that much, or if they do, people see them. Like,
Yeah,
they're
because they're
huge.
massive. Yeah. I don't know.
I
Yeah,
was
and you're
reading
right.
something. I've never seen a moose in real life. I was reading
Oh,
something though that you could drive your car in between their legs. That's how big they are.
yeah, they are
Have you seen one?
huge. Hmm. I've seen two actually. I'm really lucky. I saw a baby one also. Um, one was I was climbing a 14er, which is a 14,000 foot mountain for anyone who doesn't know. And then that one was really far in the distance. But then another one was near Rocky Mountain National Park with my dad. And they were just hanging out down by this little creek. Um, and we didn't see them because they were kind of forested, like in a forested area. But then we were suddenly like, whoa, they're right there, and you should not get close to them.
No,
Like,
no, no.
bad idea.
Very
So,
territorial. Yeah.
yeah, but still, it was
Whoa.
amazing. Yeah.
That's so cool. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I can, the thing that whenever anyone brings up a moose that I think about is that book Hatchet. Did you read
Oh,
that in the
yeah.
school?
Yeah.
Where he gets like mauled, like not mauled, but like trampled basically by a moose, like
Right.
nearly. He does like I think
Yeah.
he breaks a leg or something like that, but
Hmm.
he's lucky he doesn't get killed. But
Yeah.
man, that book messed me up as I was never getting on a plane again.
Oh, I don't remember it well. I guess it didn't traumatize me.
Yeah, for anyone who hasn't read it, probably if you're from outside of the US, it's about a
Mhm.
boy who gets on a flight. I think his parents are divorced, and he gets on like a tiny little hopper flight with just him and the pilot to see, from one parent's house to the other,
Mhm.
across some like major forest. And the pilot has a heart attack, and the
Oh.
plane goes down. It crash lands into a lake in the middle of
Mm.
nowhere in a forest, and this kid manages to get out. He manages to help steer the plane into the lake so it doesn't hit land. And then he manages to get out and basically has to survive with
Mm.
nothing, but he ends up diving into the lake to try and get the black box out. And like it's like a survival story, but it's incredible, but like it was traumatizing because he's
Stressful.
like
Yeah.
a kid. He's like a kid. He's
Mhm.
like 11 or 12, and he
Yeah.
figures out how he gets like impaled on porcupine
Mm.
little spines, and he gets
Yeah.
trampled by a moose, and like all this horrible shit happens, and he's like freezing. He has to learn how to make fire for the first time. Like he doesn't
Yeah.
have these skills, and I think all he's able to get from the plane's like emergency kit is a hatchet. And so that's
Mm.
like all he has, and that's why it's
Yeah.
called Hatchet.
Right.
Anyway, it's an excellent book. If you haven't read it, I won't spoil the ending, but every time I think about a moose, I think about that. And
Yeah.
I won't lie, when I read that book for the first time in like grade 6, I remember thinking like, what if there's a Bigfoot?
What an amazing connection.
I know, bringing it full circle back to that
Mhm.
girl Liv.
Yep.
So
Uh,
funny.
love it.
I love it. I'm here for the cryptids.
Yeah, same. Why not?
Cryptids. Why not? Why not? You know?
Yeah.
Why not
Why
a
not
cryptid?
cryptids?
Why not? Why not?
Jinx.
Why are we like
Said
this?
it at exactly the same time.
Yeah, I love that for us.
Hmm.
Okay, well, thank you so much for listening to our Wendigo slash Bigfoot episode, everyone. Stay spooky. TBD on what we're doing next week. Maybe some more
Hmm.
haunted places
Yeah.
because I've really been enjoying those.
Yeah, those are fun.
There's some good ones. We'll pick a
Hmm.
new, fun, spicy location. Um, but yeah, follow us on social at Girls Gone Spooky on FB and IG. And if you've seen Bigfoot, shoot us
Oh,
an email,
please. Please.
girlsgonespooky@gmail.com. And
Hmm.
like I said, stay spooky, friends.
Stay spooky. Bye.
Bye.